We continue our Sports Page Summer of Football. We're previewing teams from around the country in college football, getting you ready for the 2012 season. And right now we're pleased to be joined going to the Big 12 by the head football coach at Iowa State. Paul Rhoads joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports Page. Hey, Coach Rhoads, Vince Ferrara and Brendan Quinn here in Knoxville. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing very well today. How about you guys?
We're good. So is there still buzz over last season? I mean, the great success, the high-profile win at home over Oklahoma State. Do you still feel that energy around the Cyclones program?
Well, people sure talk about it a lot, so it's hard not to feel it. But and anytime you're talking about something that is that positive, I think it's great for your program. But I know our football team and our coaching staff are anxious to get started and excited for 2012 and what new challenges lie ahead.
Coach, if you could, for people that aren't familiar, you were at Pitt prior to going there to take on that opportunity at Iowa State where you had been before. But talk about working with two of the better players in the NFL at Pitt, and Darrelle Revis and Larry Fitzgerald, if you could, for our listeners.
Very privileged and fortunate to be a part of that. Two guys that I would argue that are best at their position right now in the game, and you could make argument maybe potentially at the end of their careers could be the best all time at their positions. Learned a lot from both. The interesting thing about Larry being on the other side of the ball, I was the defensive back coach and defensive coordinator at Pitt when those two guys were there. Larry would walk down the hallway, and he'd walk in my office and want to talk to me about what I was seeing, what things he was giving away, what things are used to stop him, and he was always studying the game. Darrelle was a young man who was just so intense from the first day that he walked on campus. I remember after our first practice in helmets only, I walked in and said, this guy's going to be a superstar. He was just that intense and physical on the field that you knew he had special qualities and special traits, and very blessed to be involved with both those two young men.
How rare is that, what Larry Fitzgerald did to go out of your way, maybe think outside of the box like that, to want to get better? How rare is that for a guy on the college level to do something like that?
Well, I don't know if it's rare. I think the great ones all possess that. They are always looking for an edge. And I think it exists on every college campus that we all have those guys. We wish they all were that way, but they're not. Sometimes the light goes on. Sometimes the desire burns a little bit deeper in certain guys. But Larry was a guy. If your listeners know the story, or you guys, who was brought up around the pro game. His dad was involved with the Minnesota Vikings. He was from the Twin Cities, and he grew up being a ball boy for the Vikings and being around the likes of Chris Carter and some special players like that. So he was honing his craft from a very early age, and certainly hasn't stopped.
We're visiting with Iowa State head football coach Paul Rhoads, entering his fourth year, has had tremendous success. Iowa State has won 9 Big 12 games in the last 3 years. They'd won 3 total league games the 3 years prior to that, and new energy at Iowa State. Coach, before we get into your team, I want you to speak about a guy that, as you well know, in spending time in the SEC, a guy that's still very, very important in this area, a legend in Johnny Majors, who still wears his Sun Bowl cap from his time at Iowa State, and also, obviously, like you, had a stop at Pitt as well. Talk about Johnny Majors and his still involvement in the history of Iowa State football.
Well, Coach Majors is still revered here in Ames, and as well as he is back in Pittsburgh, and I'm sure in Knoxville. Additionally, Coach Majors is a dear friend and a great mentor of mine. When I went to Pitt, He had an office there, and he was still working in fundraising and such. And I went up. We were building a new facility at the time, and I'd go up and sit in his little office, and we'd talk cover two, and we'd talk football. And he shared with me several binders of information from coaches like himself to Bear Bryant and so forth. So he's a guy that really has touched lives any place that he's ever been. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about the players that he's coached, the coaches that have been under him, the boosters, the fans, and he really loved Ames, Iowa. He and Mary Lynn and the people of Ames feel the same.
His storytelling is amazing, isn't it?
He spoke at our first spring clinic when I came back here to be the head football coach. And I don't know what we gave him, an hour and 15 minutes, and his opening story took about 20. But it went back to when he was here and what he was paid, and not just in the form of salary, but sides of beef and things like that, and where things are now. But, yeah, Coach Majors certainly can tell a story.
Joined by Paul Rhoads, Iowa State head football coach. Talk about your quarterback competition in camp and how important that is to settle on a guy to start the season.
We all know the importance of competition at every position. Without it, a guy doesn't get pushed and doesn't improve in every facet of the game and thus start reaching his potential. And having that kind of competition at the quarterback spot, I think, really elevates our whole football team. We've got two guys that both started a number of games last year. They both quarterbacked our team to 3 victories each. Steele Jantz, who will be a senior, and Jared Barnett, who will be a redshirt sophomore for us. So I look at it as a luxury. I'm not trying to find a guy who's just going to go out there and do it the first time in his career with no experience. I'm looking for the best guy of two guys that have led us to victories against very, very good competition.
Talk about the rest of the offense around those quarterbacks and some of the things that stand out about your offense.
We finally believe we have a number of playmakers in our offense. The wide receiver position probably hasn't been dynamic enough or deep enough to allow an offense like ours to have that game-breaking ability. We think we got that this year. I mean, we're going to go through training camp and rep 8, 9 guys with our first 2 units and try to figure out who our best 3 are and then our best 6 and who are our situational guys. And we finally feel we have a number that can turn 6-yard passes into 60-yard plays and much needed for our offense to score more points. Chantrell Johnson's a young man who got hurt a year ago, had to have surgery on his neck, single fusion, which was very successful, and he's back and healthy. Joins James White and Jeff Woody to give us 3 very productive running backs, and then an offensive line that is the deepest group that we've had and possesses a very strong work ethic.
Let's hop over to defense. That's your expertise as a former defensive coordinator at Auburn, at Pitt, and you certainly worked there. But you have a very experienced defensive coordinator in Wally Burnham. Spent a lot of time at USF. How does that work for a coach who specializes on one side of the ball, but then you have such an experienced defensive coordinator? Talk about how that all works together in getting a game plan.
Well, when I hired our initial coordinators, we've since changed it offense as Tom Herman left and became the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, and we promoted from within. But when I hired back in 2009, I knew I did not want to be involved. I didn't want to be involved in the play calling. I didn't want to be involved in the planning because I knew I wanted to be involved in everything else. And as a coordinator, I mean, it's a 5 a.m. till your eyes start to close on you type of job, and I wasn't going to get a chance to spend that time. I'd coached against Wally in the Big East for 8 years. I'd seen what he had done defending spread offenses, and I knew how many we were going to face, and what an awesome hire for our program to get a guy who's been around the game so long and has forgot more football than most of us even know.
I've read some publications say that Iowa State may have the best group of linebackers in the Big 12. What do you think about that?
Well, I wouldn't trade them. We've got two kids that are going to be true seniors, both played for us as true freshmen when we arrived, Jake Knott and A.J. Klein. A.J. was the co-defensive player of the year in our league a year ago, and Jake battled through injuries after coming off his sophomore year, in which he received votes for defensive player of the year in our league. Both are receiving attention as all Big 12 and preseason All-American and such, and Butkus Award, and I think they're very deserving of it. They're smart. They fit the measurables were what you would expect from linebackers. They're tough. They're physical. They understand this league, and they understand our defense.
We're visiting with Iowa State head football coach Paul Rhoads here on the News Sentinel sports page. Coach, you've been able, you and your staff have some experience in the Southeast. You guys have been able to really get some players from the Southeast. Talk about how important that is, you think, with all the players down here.
Well, it's what you just said there. It's all the players. There are not a lot of players in the state of Iowa. 6, 8, 10 on a good year are going to sign Division I scholarships. You can go into some programs in the Southeast and they'll have that many on one football team, and that's just the brutal truth. When I hired the staff, I wanted not only great recruiters, but I wanted great recruiters in specific areas. And then I got a number of guys that are either from the Southeast or have recruited there for 20-plus years, and they have done a great job. And what I think our staff does is a marvelous job of identifying the guys that fit Iowa State's program, evaluating the guys that we can project and develop in the players that can win in this league, and then securing them. And we're just going to continue to do that in battle and not worry about how many stars they have behind their name and so forth.
Hey, Paul, this is Brennan Quinn with the News Sentinel. Speaking of the Southeast, with A&M and Mizzou coming over, and how familiar you are, I just wanted to see if you could touch on each program and just kind of give us your opinion of where they are today, basically.
I think both of them will compete probably better than some might expect. I think there's different opinions of our two leagues. I think our league is the deepest in the country. When you look at Team 1 through Team 10, you're going to have to strap it up and really, really compete every week. I think the upper echelon of the SEC right now has proven they are the best in college football by the number of national championships that they've consecutively put together. But what people in the SEC are going to discover from A&M and Mizzou is that they can compete with all of them. And what will be interesting is as they become entrenched in that league and recruit to it and to see over the long haul how they fit and what they become.
So the trade-off of TCU and West Virginia coming in, Missouri, Texas A&M, Big 12 sit in a better spot now? Well,
immediately, I'm not so sure. I don't think any of the top 25 rankings have come out. Maybe they have. But I think TCU and West Virginia are both going to be above Missouri and A&M when it comes to this season. So I think we've further strengthened our league as we go into 2012, make it even more challenging. This is our fourth year here, as you've said, and every year we've been in the top 5. Iowa State has been in the top 5 in toughest schedules in the country by about any prognosticator you want to pull up, and we are again this year, and I think that just tells you what you're biting off in this league.
Coach, last thing with you, we appreciate your time. Do you have a relationship with Derek Dooley or anyone on this coaching staff here at Tennessee by chance?
Sal Sinceri is a guy that I got to know at Pitt. somewhat well, and he's the one I know off the top of my head. I'm not sure who else. I do not know Coach Dooley, but have great respect for him, certainly.
Iowa State opens up the season September 1st. Another challenging schedule for the Cyclones, hosting Tulsa, 6-7 year last year, and high expectations, increased expectations. That's the way the coach wants it. Paul Rhoads joining us here on the New Sentinel Sports page. Coach, really appreciate it. Always enjoy our visit with you. Best of luck through camp.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. That is Paul Rhoads, the head football coach at Iowa State.